experiment failed this morning.
It has. Now, I do have to throw a certain asterisk on it because it's an incomplete picture right now. They are missing both Kemba Walker, the real Kemba Walker, and Marcus Smart. So they're playing without a true playmaker on the floor. And my concern about them coming into the season was that they were not going to have enough size, that Daniel Theis and Tristan Thompson were simply not going to be enough to get it done. But I think this is a clash of what our expectations are, that the Boston Celtics are supposed to be turning the corner and now be a title contender right there with the Bucks and the Heat and the Brooklyn Nets. And the fact of the matter is, Danny Ainge is right. When he said his roster, it put it on him. His roster is not good enough. He's 100% correct. Their roster, they are a 500 team, and by and large, they have 500 talent.
Yeah. So are you surprised that Miami has not necessarily unraveled? They've just regressed to the mean a little bit. Are you surprised by it?
I actually am surprised because I just thought that their attention to detail during the regular season, they're a little bit like the San Antonio Spurs East. I didn't know that they would be as good as they were in the bubble, but I didn't expect them to fall this far. But what we're seeing is, one, the absence of Jay Crowder. Never realized how valuable he was as a defensive piece. Jimmy Butler has missed time, has been in and out of the lineup. And two young guys who were on fire in the bubble, Tyler Herro and Duncan Robinson, have been exposed to a certain extent. Teams are exploiting them at the defensive end, and they're not knocking shots down as consistently as they did in the bubble. It took me back, Colin, to remembering that when we were getting ready to go into the bubble, I got this sense that there was a lot of teams that were looking at it with uncertainty. And the Miami Heat approached it with as opportunity. Like, they got together, they're in Florida. They saw it as, hey, this is a short run, and if we just attention to detail and we do the right things, we could make something out of this. And indeed they did. But what we are seeing is that was a reflection of them taking advantage of the bubble circumstances and not necessarily who they really are. They may be a tinderbox emotionally, but are you surprised how quickly Brooklyn's become good? Not really, because I thought that they were going to be the best offense in the league when Harden first joined them. And I thought that was going to be tough to compete against on a night in, night out basis. I don't look at them, because of their recent swing, as being as good as everybody suggests that they are. Yes, they beat the Lakers, but they beat the Lakers without Anthony Davis and Dennis Schroeder. Yes, they beat the Clippers, but they beat them based on what is wrong with the NBA right now, which is that flopping is a winning strategy. James Harden, without question, flopped on the last play and was rewarded for it. And the load management approach to the game has just completely gotten out of hand, where you're trying to win a game and you decide, well, sorry, Paul, you've hit your Paul George, you've hit your your minute restriction. Right. We're going to have to sit you for the final 3 minutes. If neither of those things happen, if you don't reward the ridiculous flop and you don't sit Paul George, the Clippers win this game because the Nets, for as dynamic as they are offensively, could not slow them down. Their defense could not come through in the final minutes, and that is my great issue with them. As dynamic as they are offensively, defensively, they're still susceptible. You and I talked about this in the podcast last night about Anthony Davis, that there's very few what I would call really ones in the NBA. I think Dame Lillard is, LeBron is, Chris Paul is, Steph Curry is, where emotionally and physically, every night, same guy. Giannis is a little bit of a liability late. Kawhi's nonverbal. Kyrie's a little flaky. Kevin Durant, you're never quite sure where he is. And then there's Dame and Steph and Chris Paul and LeBron. I get the same dude every night. Yeah. And I watch Anthony Davis,
And if you ask Lakers brass privately, are you a little disappointed with what you were getting this year? This was going to be the year of the subtle baton pass. Yeah. And he didn't show up. He didn't play very well. He's hurt again. You think privately they'd admit, even with a title, they're disappointed?
Yeah, look, I feel as if under the circumstances, having won a title, having a short off season, having no training camp, and I can't help but feel that the Lakers know who Anthony Davis is. And this is why, in spite of all his amazing talent, the Pelicans barely got to the playoffs, would scratch their way in. And if you are a top 5 player, as many people rate him, I don't care who you have around him, you should at least be making the playoffs. Kevin Garnett, year after year, couldn't go very far, but he damn sure made sure the Minnesota Timberwolves were at least a playoff team.
Yeah.
Anthony Davis was not capable of that in New Orleans. So simply because he came to the Lakers, and I guess I thought that winning a championship might give him a little more of that resolve, might give him a little more belief and determination in his own abilities. And while I was never convinced that the torch would be passed and he would become everything that LeBron is as far as making other guys better, I did expect that he was going to come out with something additional to prove. But the Lakers collectively have not really approached it that way. You know, they coast for 3.5 quarters and they measure teams and they go, you know what, if we play hard for 6 minutes, we can still put these teams away. And for the most part, that's what they've done. So I don't know that we've seen the real AD, and we certainly haven't seen the real Lakers, and yet they are still 22-9. So I'm going to reserve judgment on all of that. But to me, the big picture is AD is all that he's always been, and the championship does not appear to have made a significant change in that.
Finally, Zion is putting up historic numbers, and let's take out yesterday. It's not translated to wins. Why?
2 reasons. One, because of the way the game's being played right now. It is an offensive-oriented game. Nobody's playing great defense. And so Zion is putting up these tremendous numbers, and I love watching him play. It's just entertaining to watch a body like that move like that and finish around the rim like that. But that said, and you and I talked about this, there are stars and there are superstars. Stars get their numbers, sometimes extraordinary numbers. Superstars get their numbers and they get other people's numbers. And Zion's game doesn't really equate to creating easy opportunities for other people. You look at his assist totals, and then you go to the defensive end, and he's really not a factor there. I mean, for a guy who can move the way he can and has the leaping ability, you would think that he would be averaging less than a blocked shot a game. I think it's also the composition of the Pelicans in that you have a defensive-oriented coach, and where is the real leadership with this team? Again, kind of like the Celtics. They're a really good team, and they have a dynamic player like Zion, but he's a 2-point scorer in what is now a 3-point league, and he is not a factor in that aspect of the game whatsoever. And when you have both Zion and Steven Adams on the floor, you have 2 guys who are not 3-point threats whatsoever in a league that values the 3-point shot more than anything else.
Love watching the video, though. Rick Bucher, Fox Sports. Great talking to you, buddy. Thanks.
You got it, Colin.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though, and I'm not one of these good old days, guys. Like, I watch the NBA, but he is really old school. It's very Barkley, it's very Karl Malone, where, Charles could shoot threes, but Charles finished at the rim a lot, and he created conflict. He would attack. D. Wade's game was largely, D. Wade's probably played bigger than anybody in the history of the league at 6'4.5". What made D. Wade's game so fun, it was so much about contact. He was like a football player playing in the NBA. Now, he hit the deck a lot because of it, probably shortened his career, But I miss guys that go right at the rim. Barkley did, Malone did, D. Wade did. It's a very old school style of play. But I do think the league now is so much about the jumper. I think sports is better when it's layered. I like running games in football. I do. I like base runners in baseball. Like I like the layers to basketball. And I think I would love to see another 4 or 5 guys that attack the rim, don't shoot threes. And I think for 280 pounds, I've never seen a player get 40 inches off the floor faster. Not Barkley, not Malone. He is just, I mean, just the ability to get up fast.